Alright guys, I'm finally back. I was going to cover High Helm content today, but I don't have access to that information yet. So instead, I'm going to be reacting to Puffin Forest. I've been running Pathfinder 2e for over a year now video. If you guys don't know who Puffin is, he's an amazing creator. I'm going to leave a link to his channel and to the video itself in the description below. So definitely go check him out. With that being said, let's just get right into this.
Hello, welcome. I know that some of you are curious because you see the title, so I'm just going to say it right up front, the thesis statement for the video, which is that I've been running Pathfinder 2nd Edition for a year, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. Definitely enjoying it more than when we first started playing it. So, kind of the background to the story. I wanted to take a break from 5th edition. I had been running it for several years and kind of wanted to try a different system. I was originally leaning towards running a more rules light game. However, my players were not as interested in one of those systems because they were like, we want powers and abilities and rules for how those powers interact with each other. So that ended up kind of ruling out Fate or Dungeon World or any of the other light systems out there. And it really kind of narrowed it down the pool of potential games that we could jump into. A week later, out of the blue, I had contacted them again and said, hey, how would you guys feel about playing Pathfinder First Edition? Which was a weird choice, but before they could finish roasting me over the pit fire, I was able to explain, look, I haven't played it in forever, and I actually want to try it to again, and I remember it being like really complicated and difficult, and but we are better gamers than we were, plus one of the players is interested in trying it again because he had played it a while ago, and another player had played it in high school, so yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, Pathfinder First Edition is definitely one of those systems that is a lot like Dungeons and Dragons 3.5. So, yes, it's very complicated. I do think that Pathfinder 2nd Edition is better. Otherwise, I wouldn't be covering it on this channel. But anyway, let's see how that went. I'm guessing pretty badly.
So we got into Pathfinder First Edition, we did a session 0 and a session 1, and that was it. We stopped after that point. It was really rough.
Yeah, Pathfinder First Edition can be really rough, especially if you're not used to that many rules. Most definitely. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is not rules light, but it's rules lighter than Pathfinder First Edition. But that might be just because Pathfinder First Edition was out for years and there's a lot more content for that.
So the first problem we have going into it is that most of my players nowadays kind of need an online character builder or some kind of assistant tool, and that a lot of the ones that are out there for 3.5 in Pathfinder are kind of old or buggy or out of date. And sometimes when they're building their characters, I'd be like, why do you have this 20th level world-ending sword? And they'd be like, well, the system let me add it to my character sheet. And I'd be like, but it's a 20th level sword. And they'd be like, but then why didn't it give me an error when I added it to my sheet? And I have to go no and remove it. And the compounding issue is that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense though, because Pathfinder First Edition really isn't the go-to system now. So, Paizo isn't going to update character builders for that. So it makes sense that you'd run into those types of problems.
Enough about the system to actually fix any of their problems. We had originally gotten into it like, well, it's our first time playing the system, we'll just keep it simple, try not to do anything majorly complicated, and then we cut to 3 hours into character creation, and I'm like looking up stat blocks for monsters because someone decided to go the custom race builder option, and now I gotta find a balanced way to homebrew this ability that they want. It also kind of makes me appreciate that normally when we're playing, each individual player knows part of the rules and they're able to correct each other. But here, when we're going into it blind, it's very difficult. But, I do have a funny story from it. So in the session, the players are fighting some snakes. And I know how snakes are run in 5th edition, where they just kind of have a poison tag to their damage. They hit someone, they roll, maybe they get poisoned, blah, blah, blah. Here, when a snake bites you, they took 1 piercing damage and then rolled Constitution, and then they took like Constitution damage. And all of a sudden, one of the players almost dies from snake bites, and he's having to rest and recover while he's getting his Constitution back, and the cleric's healing magic does nothing because it's poison. It's not like a wound that you can just patch up. So on the one hand, while the fight was longer and more complicated, it was kind of cool. Like, that was a story, you know? That was a snake. That felt like a snake. But after that, my group, which...
Yeah, that's one of the things I don't like about 5th edition is a lot of monsters don't really feel like they should. And they just kind of... the players are so uber powerful that it's generally pretty hard to give the players a challenge. And that's kind of why I don't... That's kind of why I don't even run. It's kind of why I don't cover 5th edition on this channel, because I mean, I just don't like it very much. I mean, I like it enough to play it, but not enough to... I'm considering it, but to be honest with you, with the whole WotC thing and the fact that I don't like it enough, I'm still thinking about it. I don't know. I may start covering 5th edition content on this channel. I just don't know. But anyway, I do like how Pathfinder 1st edition and 2nd edition make monsters feel a lot more threatening than they do in 5th edition.
Normally wasn't interested in 2nd edition, after playing 1st edition, was totally on board. Imagine that. So I ended up being kind of in this weird position while being someone that prefers a lighter system, kind of running Pathfinder 2nd edition, even though it wasn't something I was kind of interested in. And then after running it and playing it for several months again, I did kind of come around to see how the system works. I think that sort of the big takeaway for me, large part of that, is that there are certain encounters that you can run in Pathfinder that just don't work in 5th edition. Well, I don't know if I would say that Pathfinder is a more balanced system. It's just that what it values is very different than in 5e. Because in that system, it kind of wants you to have a wider boards with lots of enemies, and spreading out damage is very important. Whereas I think that in Pathfinder, it sort of wants you to have like one very tall effect or enemy. In Pathfinder, I was originally overwhelmed with a lot of different persistent effects that were happening. I found that the more and more I GM it, the more I kind of scale it down to be like maybe 1 or 2 sort of active effects at a time, because I know that it's going to be harder to maintain the board state round after round if these are just being persistent. I do think I would describe it as kind of more of a lower power fantasy. It's been interesting that the players haven't been really overly excited about their characters or the abilities. Like, there's nothing that they've gotten that they've been overjoyed about. But there is an upside to this, that I, as a GM, almost never encounter one specific power that I need to work around. A lot of...
Yeah, that's the thing. What you have to work around in Pathfinder 2nd edition when you GM is the party's teamwork. That's what you have to work around. I mean, there's no individual thing that's like overpowered. I mean, I know a lot of people think the fighter class is overpowered, but I did a video on why it isn't. Anyway, yeah, there's no real, and yeah, he's right. The thing that I find about Pathfinder 2nd edition is that those little bonuses that do stack actually matter a ton. I mean, it's one thing, you know, you can't really I mean, even an on-level monster can completely destroy you. So, I mean, that's the thing. Every single on-level monster is designed for 2 party members to take on. So, yes, teamwork is vital in this system. And those little bonuses and penalties actually do matter a ton because unlike in 5th edition, monsters in Pathfinder 2nd edition are so much stronger than the players are. Those little bonuses and penalties actually matter a ton. I mean, sure, a single +1 isn't going to affect very much. It's when you start combining that with other bonuses that stack with each other that you really start to understand the system and how to actually beat these monsters that are so much stronger than you. I mean, just lowering the enemy's AC or lowering their attack roll can be huge. They say that every +1 matters, and they're right, but only if you combine them with other bonuses and penalties. And he is right that Pathfinder wants to have like tall monsters. And that's why you want to build wide characters in this system. You know, it's not like 5th edition where you can just build around one thing and expect to win. You just don't win that way in Pathfinder 2nd edition.
At times in 5e, the magic is tremendously powerful, but it's balanced around concentration checks. So they kind of have to give you all that power up front, and it makes for very punchy fights. While you could run kind of a shorter, faster, punchier Pathfinder 2nd Edition battle, I think that where the system really shines is these kind of less frequent, longer, grindier games. Since the magic system sort of assumes that the fights are going to be these long slogfests, which is why each fight kind of assumes that the players are entering into it with full hit points, and the magic often involves these very minor but persistent effects. I think that I would describe that Pathfinder does kind of hold the players down. It does prevent them from using abilities in certain ways, but that's a trade-off. Because on the other hand, what you get is I, as a GM, rarely have an ability that I need to work around. Otherwise, they're just going to completely wreck everything. In my group, we've got an interesting spread of players. We have one player who loves it, has always...
Yeah. Yeah, there are all these persistent effects that just... There aren't as many as there are in Pathfinder 1st edition, because, oh god, that was completely... what's the word I'm looking for? It's like... That got out of hand. That got completely out of hand. There were just so many bonuses and penalties that stacked in that system. It was, There was so much to keep track of. That's why I stopped doing Pathfinder 1st edition when 2nd edition came out. There's a lot less that stacks in Pathfinder 2nd edition, but you still want to stack those bonuses when you can. That's why teamwork is so important in this system. Because, you know, the fighter might fear the target, but... Well, bad example. The spellcaster might cast a fear spell, but he's not going to be able to make the target flat-footed. No, that's the marshal's job. Yeah. So I mean, you know, and it's like, and then you if you add in the bard's inspire courage, then you start like absolutely wrecking fights, and that's great. And that's what a lot of players don't understand about this system. He's talking about his players now.
Always loved it, super fan. We've got 2 players who are kind of on the fence who've kind of come around to it, and 1 player who loves us and will play the game even though it's not his favorite just because of how much he loves us. And I have a tremendous respect.
Yeah, Pathfinder 2e most definitely is not for everyone. It's one of those systems where it's like, if you want a game where you're just doing a whole bunch of damage and trying to out damage the enemy, Pathfinder 2e is not the system for you. Flat out. I mean, it's like you said, they value different things. 5th edition expects you to try to out damage the enemy. I mean, sure, there are bonuses and penalties to help you do that, but they expect you to use those to damage the enemy. I mean, that's true. I mean, that's true of any system. But the thing is that in 5th edition, you really have to, you don't have to use those in order to be effective. In Pathfinder 2e, it's a completely different story. You really do have to use those persistent effects that, like things like frightened and sickened and clumsy and flat-footed. Yeah, the game expects you to use those to actually have strategy. And that's, I think, what a lot of people don't realize when they first get into the system, is that this game requires you to actually have strategy instead of just trying to out damage the opponent. And that's one of the reasons why I love this system so much, is that it's not boring. You actually have to think about what you're doing instead of just attack, attack, attack. But yes, the system absolutely is not for everyone.
Respect for that player. Also, Path Builder. That app is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Like, I actually don't think we would be playing this game now if we had to do everything by hand like when we first started. There's a lot of stuff that I like the second time around now. I like the fact that it doesn't have magic weapons being the be-all to end-all. I like that it differentiates between different types of physical damage. There's still some stuff I just don't like in the system, like diagonal movement. I've played it, don't like it. I recently cut it out. I just said if you're going diagonal, if it's 5 squares, it's 5 squares. And everything is 1 for 1, and I'm so glad I did. I think overall,
Yeah, yes, the different types of physical damage is great. And what was I gonna say? Hold on. Let me go back. Oh yeah, Path Builder. Yes, Path Builder is an amazing app. I use it. I don't use it very much, but I know that a lot of people do, and I have used it some. And it does help out a lot. It's just I know the system well enough that I don't really need a character builder like that. I mean, I just kind of go through I just kind of use Archives of Nethys to do my teamwork builds on this channel, and that's enough for me. But I do agree that Path Builder is absolutely amazing. It is, if you're looking for an online character builder, definitely pick up Path Builder. Absolutely. You can get it on your computer really online really easily. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get it on your phone unless you have an Android. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not the Path Builder app is not available on iPhone. Unfortunately, believe me, I know I've tried to download it, but anyway, you've got an Android phone, you definitely want to pick up you definitely want to pick up Path Builder. Or you can do it online if you've got an iPhone like I do. Anyway.
When I compare the two games, when I run Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I know that the fights are going to take twice as long as D&D, but that the crunchiness will make for more interesting encounters, and that the system wants to have every single attack feel unique. Like if you're attacking with a forceful weapon versus an agile weapon, like those tags matter, but that uniqueness comes with a downside, and that downside is time. But the decisions that they're making in combat will be more impactful. The more time.
Yes, that's another reason I love Pathfinder 2nd Edition, is that, yes, those traits actually do matter. Traits hugely matter. And the fact of the matter is that makes fights, that makes decisions much more impactful, as he said, which is why teamwork is so important. Because, you know, if the fighter's using a greatsword and because if a fighter is using a greatsword and the enemy is resistant to slashing damage, that actually matters. Unlike in 5e, where you're just kind of doing damage. Strategy is hugely important in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and yeah. I have agreed with pretty much everything he has said so far, other than the Diagonal 5 thing. I think that makes the fights more interesting.
Time you spend running it, it will get faster, but I'm just talking about like 20 to 30% faster. It's never going to be zero. There was one time where the players fought these alchemical golems, and they got positively wrecked by them. The party fled the fight and rested, recovered, and the next adventuring day just redid the fight. It was just a kind of a hard reset, everything exactly the same spell slots, same everything. Okay, let's just do the fight again. And the second time the players wrecked the golems, and it was just because
I know what he's gonna say here. It's because of because they were smart. They knew they were getting wrecked by the golems, so they ran away and rested. I will never understand why I have never seen any players that are getting wrecked by a fight don't run away. I will never understand that. I mean, it's okay to run away and rethink your strategy. I recently had an encounter where the party got TPK'd. And yeah, it's because their strategy was just try to do damage to these golems, just try to do damage to these drakes, and it just didn't work. And if they had run away and rethought their strategy, then maybe they could have actually, you know, kept their characters. But I mean, you know, I think TBKs do happen, but I mean, they don't have to happen as often as much as they do. Fact is, you can run away and redo the fight, which is exactly what these guys did. That is amazing. These players were smart.
they were better the second time around at kind of taking advantage of these little efficiencies and found ways to use their actions to kind of kite the golems and forcing them to waste their turns. So I guess now we're getting into the end of it, and you're probably wondering whether or not I'd be recommending it to people. And it's still a very hard question to answer, because I kind of feel like it's a strong, dark roast of coffee, which I developed a taste for it, but I don't know if I'd actually recommend it. Like it's still pretty crunchy, and while it's easy to just roll a d20 and add the number, like that's not the game. The game of Pathfinder is a tight resource management where you have this limited pool of actions for bonuses and penalties, and trying to make decisions on what's the most efficient way to do the thing that you want to do. And if all the players are not on board with that, you're gonna have a miserable time. And you could end up with a group like mine who enjoy spending X amount of time adding up all these little bonuses, or like our friend who loves us and will put up with our nonsense.
Okay, so yeah, yeah. What he's pretty much said what that ending was pretty much what I was gonna say. Is that yeah, it's not for everyone. It's I don't think it's as crunchy as Pathfinder First Edition. I played First Edition for years, and yeah, if you want to stack bonuses and penalties for Pathfinder First Edition, there's like so many things to stack. There's like item, circumstance, status. Um, I'm sure there's others too. I mean, those are the ones in Pathfinder Second Edition. But I mean, you know, there's a lot more in First Edition. I just don't remember them. But yeah, the bottom line for me here is that the system isn't for everyone, and but if you're looking for a system that where strategy actually matters instead of a system where it wants you to do as much damage as possible, Pathfinder 2e is for you. Most definitely. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for me. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like, and don't forget to check out the links in the description below. Definitely check out Puffin Forest. He's an amazing content creator. I'd be very surprised if you guys don't already know about him, but some people might not. So definitely check out the links in the description below for his content, because I really enjoy all of his content. I mean, he mostly does D&D 5e stuff, but his stories are very entertaining. I mean, it's fifth edition, but the stories could apply to any system, really. So, I mean, and they're very entertaining. So, he doesn't really go into the mechanics either, except in certain videos. So, you know. So, yeah, the stories he does could be in any system. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, teamwork is vital.